Welcome to Real Talk Baseball. Thank you for joining us every Thursday during the regular season and making us your go-to baseball podcast. Our show is available on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Make sure you hit those like, subscribe, and follow buttons if you haven't already. And today we are doing a breakdown of your Detroit Tigers. John, Detroit Tigers last year. It was kind of a Cinderella story, man. They kind of came out of nowhere, made the playoffs. No one expected this, dude.
What's up, Will? How you been?
I'm chilling, man.
Yeah, good. No, man. I think Detroit really felt like they kind of felt like the college basketball Sweet 16 or the Cinderella story that just kept winning. You know, they were supposed to lose in the round of 64, got into the round of 32. And you had hope for them. You know, they looked hot, and the way they just kind of manhandled the Astros there. And I did think they were going to get past Cleveland, but they did not. So I know that's going to be one of the top topics that we talk about today. And, this is a team that has some promise for the future,
Yeah, and led by not just an ace, but a super ace in Tarek Skubal, the Cy Young winner from 2024. Everyone knew that this guy was eventually going to become, an ace, but no one expected this season from him, man. The stats were out of control for Tarek Skubal, and honestly, I don't think there was anyone in the whole league that could touch this guy, man. National League, I know Chris Sale won for the National League, but Tarek Skubal, it just seems like he was just a step ahead of everybody, man.
Yeah, he's not going anywhere. He's gonna be a perennial guy. This Tarek Skubal, I think, is, like you said, kind of a little bit ahead of his time. I think you could see this coming maybe in a couple years from now, but he just dominated. And I think one of the most fun things I've seen in a long time from a pitcher was his performance in Cleveland, just telling the fans to shut up. And that it was just. He just basically went out there and just said, "Who's your daddy?" in a 1-0 win. I think in the first game 1 of the ALCS. So
it was pretty awesome, man. Like, this guy has kind of like the track record of being hurt every season, but we just saw 31 starts from Tarek Skubal, a 2.39 ERA, 228 strikeouts, and 192 innings pitched, solidifying his dominance, winning the AL Cy Young. That was just incredible to see. Detroit fans are rejoicing because they really haven't had anything to really be excited about in a while. It's nice to see the American League Central finally doing something, and they haven't really done much in the offseason yet, but I feel like something is going to happen for Detroit. Now, they did sign Alex Cobb. And Alex Cobb is one of those guys that's been around the league for a really long time. And he's kind of he's not the guy that you want to target. But for some reason, they were targeting him in free agency. They said during the winter meetings, we are targeting Alex Cobb. And their main reasoning was because they need veteran presence in the clubhouse. And you know how important veteran presence is in the clubhouse. We've talked about that time and time again with, the Mariners and teams just around the league. And maybe Alex Cobb is the guy to do it. They have a lot of really young talent, a lot of really young pitchers, and even Tarek Skubal is pretty young, man. I think he's 28 or just turned 29. Their whole pitching staff is 29 years or younger, and then they bring in 37-year-old Alex Cobb, and he brings the experience, that's for sure, And do you think that he's the guy that can actually guide this young crew? I know you're a big Jackson Jobe guy, and is Alex Cobb the guy that can guide these younger arms in the right direction?
I mean, I thought this was just a really, really weird signing. And to be fair, I said the same thing last offseason. They just went out, got Jack Flaherty immediately, paid him a lot of money, and everyone was like, why are you paying Jack Flaherty coming off of a disastrous Orioles tenure? Just kind of, it was one of the first guys to sign last year. And same with Alex Cobb. He's one of the first, let's call it not big name, but pitchers in general to go off outside of the Blake Snells of the world. And, I think it's just a very interesting move because $15 million is not chump change. That's a lot of money for 1 year. And a guy who was considering retiring. So I think if you're going to do a move like this, personally, I would have loved to see them sign, I don't know, Justin Verlander. If you want to get a veteran in your clubhouse that's been there, done that, loves Detroit. He didn't want to go to Houston in the first place, reminder. Yeah. So why not sign a guy like that? You have AJ Hinch in your clubhouse and, be the grandfather in the clubhouse, the support these guys need. I'd rather pay Justin Verlander $15 million or even a Max Scherzer. But I don't know. I think you kind of know what you're going to get from Alex Cobb, which is at best a 3.5 to 4 ERA. And is that worth $15 million? Maybe, but are you probably getting similar production out of a Verlander or Scherzer? Maybe not the innings. So they're looking at it through that lens, but I don't know. I think I would have loved to see one of those guys, and especially, a Verlander, a Scherzer who's already won multiple Cy Youngs, kind of keep guiding Tarek Skubal and say, you've done it for 1 year, but here's how you keep doing it.
Yeah, and I love that you brought up those names because not only are they former Cy Young winners, but they both played for Detroit. They both started in Detroit. Well, Scherzer actually started in the Diamondbacks organization, but then got traded very early on to Detroit. And Verlander actually has a history with AJ Hinch. They were both on the Astros when Hinch was managing, and they won the World Series a few years ago. So I love those two names that you actually just came up with. I don't know why I didn't think of that myself, but yeah, those two names, I think they probably would have been around the same price. I think Scherzer is actually still under contract with somebody for 1 more year. I don't think he's a free agent, but it's an easy trade. I mean, a lot of teams that would have Scherzer probably don't want him on the team anymore unless you're really going for that like veteran presence. He's not the same guy he was even just 2 years ago, and Verlander the same. Both of those guys are pushing 40. How much do they really have left in the tank? Not a lot. Verlander was a Cy Young, like a year ago, 2 years ago, something like that. And then he took almost a whole season off because he was injured basically the whole time. And Scherzer just keeps on dealing with that frozen shoulder. But like we said earlier, the Tigers didn't sign Alex Cobb to make 31 starts and hold a 3 ERA. They got him for that veteran presence. And Scherzer and Verlander definitely would have taken care of that as well. So another couple free agents that the Tigers are targeting is Roki Sasaki and Alex Bregman. So who isn't targeting Roki Sasaki right now? The guy's going to sign for $5 million, $6 million, something like that, because that's the most that he can be offered as an international free agent at the age that he is. So do you see Roki Sasaki actually considering the Tigers?
No. Have you ever been to Detroit?
I have not.
The Japanese culture there is not exactly thriving. No, it's cold. It's not, proven winner yet. I don't know what other players he could connect with. It would just be weird. I think the only connection there, and it's the same thing that the White Sox got a glimmer of hope, is that, it's a small market and Roki Sasaki apparently doesn't like the media. So there'd be much less pressure there for him, but that's about it, man. I can't imagine Roki Sasaki wearing a Tigers uniform, even in MLB The Show, for God's sakes, let alone in real life. So no, don't even know. If he would consider a small market team, the only team I think that could actually make some sense would be Kansas City. If you want to talk to a guy like Zach Greinke, who had major anxiety pitching in front of people and still had the career he did in Kansas City, then Milwaukee and LA and all that. But yeah, there's no chance. I would love Roki Sasaki in Philly, but I think 29 other teams want him too. And I think, there's probably realistically 3 to 5 contenders, and the Tigers are not one of them.
Yeah, what's weird is I've actually heard in some interviews that Sasaki doesn't want to play on the West Coast, which is weird because the Dodgers and the Padres are the top 2 teams that are projected to land him. So it's going to be interesting. He's going to sign within the next month. They gave him a deadline of, I think it's like January 21st, something like that. So a little more than a month away. Well, I guess we'll have to wait and see. But the next name that we're talking about, Alex Bregman. He's probably the second biggest bat in the in free agency right now that's still left over. You got Pete Alonso, Christian Walker, and Alex Bregman. So I think Christian Walker and Alex Bregman, I kind of see them as similar value. I think that offensively, I see them as similar value, especially in Detroit, because in Detroit, not a lot of home runs leave the park. So both of those guys, I think, would be upgrades in Detroit. And I have heard some talks about them potentially signing Alex Bregman. Now, the Astros were the favorites to re-sign Alex Bregman, but they just made a huge traded away Kyle Tucker, and they got Isaac Paredes back, who is a starting third baseman for the Cubs last year. So it looks like they filled that hole at third base. So Alex Bregman, where is he going? Is Detroit a possibility in your head?
I think absolutely. I think Detroit's a team that can pay Alex Bregman, and he can go in there and, I don't want to say be the savior, but if you put Alex Bregman in the Yankees lineup, I don't want to say he gets lost, but he's certainly not, he's not one of their top. He's one of their top 3 best hitters, but he might be number 3. Same thing, maybe he goes to, I don't know that there's any room in Boston for him. I don't know, definitely not the Dodgers, Mets probably not. I don't know. I don't know that any of these big contenders outside of the Phillies and the Tigers, if you want to really call them a contender, but I could definitely see him in the Tigers just with the AJ Hinch connection. It's a team that has money. It's a team that needs a superstar and a team that needs veteran leadership. What other player on that team has won a playoff game, let alone a World Series, and multiple playoff games? He's been there, almost probably at least 3/4, if not more than that in his career. Probably every year now that I say that out loud, he's been in the playoffs. So the Tigers would get someone that's already been there and can lead a group of young guys who've, in the past, let's call it 3 years, nobody on this Tigers team was even there. And so their lineup's completely flipped over. You have Javi Baez, who you're paying, but he sucks, man. So
yeah,
he's
more of a
something.
bench bat now. He's a very expensive bench bat, but he's not going to start anymore. There's no way. He hasn't been able to turn it around since he went to the Tigers. So what has it been, 2 or 3 years since he signed with the Tigers? So if he hasn't done it yet, he's just getting older. He's on the wrong side of 30 now. I don't think that he's going to be able to turn things around. So they're definitely going to have to roll with the rest of the lineup that they got. And they do have a really good lineup. Before we get to that, though, speaking about Alex Bregman, one thing that stands out about him is he just won a Gold Glove, third baseman in the American League. And that is exactly what Alex Cobb is going to need, because he is an extreme ground ball pitcher, and you're going to need a really solid glove on the left side of the infield to be able to field everything coming their way and throwing over to first base. And he does have a rocket also. So I think Alex Bregman is a very good option, but it might be a little bit too expensive for the Tigers. Who knows what kind of money they're actually willing to spend? I mean, they did just spend a lot of money on a starting pitcher that's kind of over the hill, but are they willing to spend that on a third baseman also? Or do you think that they might go the other route and go for a trade? Now, Nolan Arenado, Alec Bohm, both of those names have been thrown around in trade scenarios. I know the Phillies have Alec Bohm in very high regard. They tried to trade Alec Bohm for Mason Miller. They're valuing him extremely high. Now, do you think the Tigers actually have a chance to land either one of those names, Arenado or Alec Bohm?
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely. I don't know that Arenado would want to go there. That's part of it, is that he has a full no trade clause. So he's going to basically say where he wants to go. Alec Bohm, it kind of feels like the Phillies would give him away for a bag of donuts right now, if that bag of donuts could, pitch a couple relief innings. So the Phillies have something up their sleeve. I mean, again, I always love talking Phillies on this podcast and how it can relate to every other team in baseball. But Bohm definitely makes a lot more sense in my eyes than Arenado, simply because Arenado, I think the Cardinals too, the Cardinals are a classy organization. They're not going to ship Arenado to a place he wouldn't have a true great chance to win a championship, let alone not even want to go. So I think Bohm, if I don't know who the Tigers could really trade. I know they have one of the best bullpens in baseball, but would they really want to give up any pieces for an Alec Bohm?
Yeah, and
Probably not.
if they were to trade for an Alec Bohm, the Phillies don't want something that they can use in the future. They want something that they can use now, and the Phillies were in the playoffs last year. It seems like they're going to be in the playoffs every year because even though that division is very competitive, they are pretty much neck and neck with the Braves. Braves had a down season last year because they didn't have Strider, they didn't have Acuna. Both of those guys are coming back this season, but I still think that the Braves and the Phillies are going to be more contending with each other versus anybody else in the league. That's a huge rivalry that it kind of turned into, not like a heated rivalry like it would be with like the Mets, but the Braves have a different culture over there than the Mets do. Mets are more like raw and gritty, and the Braves are more just all skill. So it's more of a respectful rivalry, which I love to watch that. Also, that's why I watch the All-Star game. To see these guys display their skills. I appreciate what you said about Arenado, that he does have a full no trade clause, so he does get to pick the team that he goes to, which I completely agree with you. I don't think that he would want to go to the Tigers, but I also don't think that they would really want to go after Alec Bohm either, because as I was saying earlier, I think they prioritize the glove as well. And Alec Bohm just shifted over to third base not too long ago. And last season, he was pretty decent at third base defensively. But before that, he let's call him right now, he's more like a league average third baseman. But the past couple seasons before 2024, he was very below average. So I don't think they want to trade for a guy like that. I think they would rather go for like a gold glove caliber type of player, or just go with what they have, and see what if that works, and maybe head back to a trade possibly before the trade deadline comes around in July.
I think all of this kind of speaks to really, who's going to be the Tigers' biggest problem in 2025. And, they lost to the Guardians. And I'm going to be honest, it's, I know we have a segment coming up here. How did the Tigers get past the Guardians? I'd be more concerned about the Royals personally, if I'm a Tigers fan. And, I think the Royals are going to be able to out hit a lot of teams, especially Bobby Witt right in the, third spot in that lineup, second, third spot. But, I think the real way that the Tigers are going to win baseball games, especially in a pitcher's park, is with pitching. And that starts by having an ace. Tarek Skubal his name was in trade talks, and thank God they didn't trade him. But, it's going to start with Tarek Skubal, Jackson Jobe, can you continue to fill out that rotation with young guys? Probably, but I think the biggest way that you get past your division rivals, and it's not just, the Phillies threw a lot of money, signed a ton of free agents. Detroit can't do that. So in my opinion, the best way to really, get past is you got to build from within. So you got to get a lot more from your guys that you were really hoping to see make a stronger impact. And really, I'll tell you, that starts with Spencer Torkelson.
Yes.
Torkelson's been so disappointing. This was a number 1 overall draft pick just a few years ago. And he's just been so disappointing. And on top of that, I mean, we've seen steady production, heading the right way from Riley Green. Colt Keith has shown potential. Zach McKinstry, Jace Young's there too. They have a lot of prospects, a lot of young guys. Parker Meadows, Kerry Carpenter, a lot of guys with big potential. But it's just that you've seen a lot of potential, but only Riley Green has really shown the most flashes of consistency here. So if you can start getting more consistent production from a lot of these guys, and any kind of production from Spencer Torkelson will be much appreciated. So
yeah,
that's where it's going to start.
Last year, Torkelson sucked, man. He was batting like 210 he had less than 20 home runs, and this was supposed to be like their power guy. And I think we saw the power production just 1 year, just his rookie season. And then after that, his power just declined so much. And I don't know why. I mean, who knows why? But you bring up a good point that they do have a big need at first base as well as third base. So first base options, like I mentioned earlier, we have Christian Walker, Pete Alonso. I don't know if Pete Alonso wants to play in Detroit because the power numbers aren't just gonna they're not gonna be there like they were in Citi Field. And I think he's re-signing with the Mets anyway. I think that even though they spent $765 million on Juan Soto, I still think that they still have some money left that they can pay Pete Alonso, the favorite, the fan favorite. I think it would be a mistake not to bring him back. And I think he wants to continue playing in New York. He had fun there, and going back to the first base need for Detroit, Christian Walker, I don't think they want to spend that much money. Also, maybe they want to get some like veteran guidance, like we were talking about with Alex Cobb for pitching. Maybe they can go after a veteran like a Josh Bell that can help Torkelson kind of develop into a decent power hitter. Josh Bell has always been known as like the guy that doesn't really hit for average, but he has decent pop and similar skill set to Spencer Torkelson. So learning from a guy like Josh Bell that's been around the block a few times, I think that might actually be a pretty decent signing, and you can get him relatively cheap, maybe 10, 11 million. I don't think that he would command really much more than that. And a 1-year deal, just try him out. The Tigers do have some prospects coming on the way. So if Torkelson doesn't work out, you can always keep on developing those guys, and we're probably not going to see them until like 2026. I don't think that there's really a lot of prospects for Detroit that are really on their way, except for Jackson Jobe. I think he's really like the bread and butter that will kind of round out that starting rotation. They have him listed as a possible number 5 going into the 2025 season on opening day. I personally see him more as the number 2, possibly number 3 in the starting rotation. Maybe not in the beginning because he still has a lot to learn. He's only pitched 4 innings in the majors so far, so he still needs, some seasoning before he gets to that level. So moving on to prospects, any other prospects that you want to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, Jackson Jobe, you pretty much just nailed it right there. I mean, he's your bread and butter, no doubt. And he's a guy that will eventually be your number 2, so long as they keep Tarek Skubal. Otherwise, he's an ace in almost any other rotation, it seems like, or that's how he's projecting. But yeah, last year in 3 levels in 2024, Jackson Jobe pitched 91 2/3 innings, 2.85 ERA, and a 9.4 K to 9. So, I mean, that's what I'm talking about, building that rotation with him and Skubal. I mean, anything else from there is just those two. You don't need a whole lot more. Max Clark, 3rd overall pick in the 2023 draft. I think he's still a few years out, but we'll see him in the outfield. So I think that's kind of where, you start to look at the big picture and what does this look like for Detroit? Riley Green, Max Clark, Tarek Skubal. But, at what point do you say our prospects are actually suspects, and that's, you said about having a hole at first base for Torkelson. When do you give up on Torkelson? He's been your prospect. He's been a project. Is he actually a suspect? And, with any prospect, you don't know how long you want to hold them, be patient, when to call them up. You don't want to ruin a guy, but, I think between Max Clark and Jackson Jobe, those are 2 what looks like can't miss guys. So it'll be nice to see them in a couple years, really show their shine their best light. But what do the Tigers do, especially after competing? They've shown they can make it and get there and be serious contenders. They could have been and should have been in the ALCS.
Yeah, their Cinderella story got cut a little bit short, unfortunately, and they did have a couple holes, first base, third base. I think those are the biggest needs. And, you kind of mentioned their lineup. Going back, it looks like their projected lineup is Parker Meadows leading off with Kerry Carpenter batting second. And then you have Matt Vierling, who is more of he's more of a utility player. He's not going to be in the outfield every day. He's probably going to play some third, corner outfield positions. And then you have Riley Green batting cleanup, followed by Colt Keith at second base, Torkelson at first base, Jace Young at third base. Newcomer Trey Sweeney traded over, I believe, from the Yankees. Is that right? Or he was on the Yankees and then he went to the Dodgers and then now he's with Detroit. I don't remember how he got there, but he is slotted as their starting shortstop for 2025. And then catcher Jake Rogers in the ninth position. Honestly, looking from top to bottom, it's a pretty good lineup, dude, especially like the top five. All five of those guys were very productive last season. A lot of runs, a lot of RBIs, not a lot of home runs. And I think that could be somewhat of an issue. I think they really could benefit from getting a big power bat in that lineup somewhere. I don't think Alex Bregman is the guy to do that. But, you know, we'll see. Free agency is a long time until it's over. You know, we still have until March. So hopefully things get done before spring training, you know, but we'll see about that. And then looking at their starting rotation, we have Tarek Skubal, Reese Olson, Jackson Jobe, Alex Cobb, and Casey Mize. Maybe he's kind of iffy. They have some other options. I don't know. Casey Mize has been very disappointing the last couple seasons. He was a top prospect in the Detroit farm system, and it just doesn't seem like he's really worked out since then. But Alex Cobb, maybe he's the guy that's going to come in and turn things around. We shall see.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to hold my breath for it. I'm not going to say Alex Cobb's going to, win you 10 games or anything like that. And I think really they're 1 to 2, I don't want to say elite bats, but really good bats. And Alex Bregman would make this lineup just look so much better on paper for me. And, even if you gave me a guy like JD Martinez along with that, like you said, someone else to just provide some pop. I mean, there's just no pop in that lineup at all. So I think that's where they're going to struggle a bit. But if you put Jackson Jobe in that rotation, and he is the real deal. So between him and Skubal, that's 2 out of 5 days that you're probably not scoring more than 2-3 runs in that entire game. So they're going to have a chance in 40% of their games. I'm going to give you a prediction of 87 and 75.
Last year, they were 86 and 76. So you think they're only going to win one more game than they did last year?
I do. I mean, they got hot last year. They got very scorching hot at the end of last year. So baseball's
that was the thing, is they got hot at the end. I'd like to see a little more consistency throughout the season. I think one of their biggest Achilles heel was that they had to face the Guardians so often. But it looks like the Guardians, they're planning for the future. They traded away Andres Jimenez, and possibly some other names are going to be traded away also. So it looks like the Guardians are not really like focused on 2025 anymore, which plays in the favor of the Royals and the Tigers. So it's going to be a battle, man. The Royals have a really solid team. The Guardians have a really solid team still, even after that trade. And re-signing Shane Bieber to that 1-year deal. He's probably not going to be there for the first few months, so that kind of plays in the Tigers' favor also. But I'm going to go a little bit higher than that, and I'm going to say Tigers are going to win 89 games and 73 losses. So I'll give them a little bit of a push for 2025. All right, well, that was our Tigers breakdown, our 2024 review, our overview, and 2025 predictions. John, thanks for joining and coming on the show. We appreciate everyone for watching, and make sure you scan that QR code in the top right corner. Like, subscribe, follow. If you want to hear the audio version of this podcast, you can listen on Spotify and Apple Podcast. And we will see you guys on Thursday for our Chicago Cubs episode. And that's a wrap. See ya. Peace.